Hello, sir. Case. Hey, no, you can leave it open because I have to come back here anyway. I'm coming. Are you? Yeah. But it was a week.
But you reset on the weekend, right?
Not a. Yeah, I'm safe.
You too, man.
You too.
Yo. Hey, thank you. You're welcome.
That's what I'm saying. That guy in particular, James, I love him to death, but like he eats in the classroom, it's just he's everything. So,
If you hold the slot.
yeah. Hey, what's up?
And the only ones I cared for and I really wanted to do was. Only did about the day before. Yeah. And funny enough, like the program is. Yeah, all the way out, I didn't come around, sorry. Yes, you know, so many ways, for me, I was thinking for freshman year, only doing, but I felt like it made sense because it's like. Because when you're gonna do, you are living in class. And you know, it's crazy, I was off like two. When they go down, like, I go to the store. Yeah. And she showed me the store, and I go, like, you had like a 2.8. I was like, you find me, I was like, off like, two. They couldn't find that. And I was like, still making that day. And there's people who like, cause see the example that it was you actually ask for leaving high school parents. So there was people who were took the class and passed out to the so you get all that meeting and the life. And that didn't make sense. There was like 2 or 4. Our principal put me in a standard reading. Right? No, like I grew up. But you told me how to make me do that. Yeah. Oh my God. But I feel wow, but like the different Spanish in Spain, I don't like. That's like our like that's in Spanish where everything could be used. It was fun. Like you really haven't like rules changed the whole. Well, I think I'm telling everybody voted. So they didn't know how to like the comfort in the house. Get vaccinated people. So that will be that. Like not really. When I first moved in, and they I appreciate that I close that. Someone's gonna draw it. It was more like your parents and like my parents, my mom, like I don't understand these things. Like I had to do the work for me. I had to work. I was ready to go speak to him.
Hey, man. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, we learned kettlebell swing yesterday. It was a lot of fun. Tonight we are probably gonna take it a bit easier. Well, we're gonna play it by ear. When everyone comes in, I'll talk. You slept great? You saw what? Oh, you saw Drake. Okay, how was that? You walked out in your row, huh? Very, very cool. Was that MSG or? Oh, wow. Look at him and his braids, man. Yeah, no, tickets are probably expensive.
Oh, really?
Really? Oh, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good deal. Yeah, no, that's really good.
I didn't know that. You got in and like. you go in the, like,
Were the seats really good or?
Yeah. seats were like-
Right above the.
I know.
Well, like the view out. Not really mosh pit, you good.
Yeah, no, for real. Well, I mean, I don't know if they mosh it at Drake concert, maybe like a Travis Scott. Oh, they were?
Yeah, like, anyone that has practice, any like 8 feet, they just go in.
Nah, Moffett's and James.
And it was when it was 721, people jumped. Oh, yeah.
He was 21 was there?
Yeah.
He was there too? Okay. What's up, guys? Happy Friday. Oh, those are good seats. Freddie's just bragging to us about the Drake concert he went to yesterday. So he's showing us all the videos and stuff. All right, let's take attendance. Where is everybody?
But that don't mean I like.
Yeah, so what I care about is he still did well on his test, even though he went out the other night or last night. So that's good. Very responsible, Freddie. All right, Freddie's here. James is here. Damon's here. No Zhang. Matt is here. No Ty yet. No Karen. Alex is here. No Alexander. Jeremy's here. Ryan is here. Dunk is here. Isaiah is here. Audrey, no. And Quaz on vacation. Okie dokie, friends. So is this due today? Yeah, we have our upper body homework assignment due today. And then while we're still waiting on a few people walking in, let's go over the next assignment that I'm actually going to assign on time. Because technically we're supposed to get our homeworks on Thursdays and then they're due the following Thursday. So this is what we have coming up next. We did upper body, we did lower body. Now we're gonna do full body. What's up? So give me a moment as I get that pulled up so we can take a look at it. Can I do what? Did we go over any lecture slides? Yeah, we did. Oh, wait, not yesterday, but the night before. So you were here. Okay. No, yesterday we took the test for the whole time in lecture, and then practical, we learned kettlebells. All right, this is your new homework. This is designing a full body homework. It's pretty much a combination of the last two homeworks. But now we have a few more details we need to follow and pay attention to. So we need to choose multi-joint exercises for every shoulder and hip joint action. So flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, horizontal flexion, extension. So, and then for the hip, flexion, extension, abduction, adduction. There's no horizontals for the hip. Then, yeah. Well, there would never be a workout that would work both joint actions simultaneously. There'll never be a workout that does both flexion and extension. It's one or the other, right? So, yeah. Not for the hip. Horizontal movements are required for the shoulders, but not for the hip. The hip doesn't do horizontal movements. Choose 3 single joint exercises. Organize your multi-joints by alternating between lower and upper. This is a really important concept. So and this goes for general training as well. Anytime we're planning a workout, we want to start with one muscle group and then alternate with the othering muscle group, just so we keep things fresh from a fatigue standpoint. All right. All multi-joint exercises must come before single joints. So do your multi-joint first, then your single joints. Organize single joint exercises in order from proximal to distal. So we want to try to do things that are higher up on the limb first and things that are lower down last. Example of that, we would probably do something like a hamstring curl before a calf raise. Yes. Yeah. There you go. Specific warm-up. So all of this also needs a warm-up as well. And then we want everything to be between 12 and 15 reps. This doesn't really matter as much, but so we're going to design our workout, hitting all the major joint actions. We're going to couple that with single joint exercises, at least 4, I think it says 3. And then we have to follow everything that it says here, multi before single, and then singles, you do the proximal before distal. All right. So due next week. You have it. I'll print them for you today. And then friends at home, I'm sure it's already in the drive for you under week 4. Not this week, but next week. Cool beans, cool beans. Also, so for my on-campus crew, really important stuff. So we also have a daytime cohort. Did you guys know that? We got students that come during the day between 12 and 3. And there is a particular student who has a food allergy, and he actually had a bit of an outbreak yesterday. So we just want to make sure, like, you guys can eat in the classroom, it's totally cool, but let's just make sure we're wiping down our spots where we eat. You know, we don't want something like that to happen, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right, let's move on. Continuing with anatomy. Yes, sir. The 2 workouts that we did? What are you asking for? Was that the workout that we designed together? I don't have that. I didn't save it. I would have if I would have known. We would have come back to it, but I didn't save it. Sorry about that. All right. So just gonna share my screen for the online crew. We started with skeletal muscular anatomy, and we got through a bunch of concepts. So we learned about prime movers or agonists. We learned about antagonists, and we also learned about synergist muscles. And then we started to get into some of the different muscle groups. We learned the muscles involved with flexion and extension, horizontal flexion and extension, abduction, adduction, and then we learned all of the joint actions of the scapula and the muscles associated with that. Just give me 1 second. I'm just trying to pull something up. Musculoskeletal anatomy. So what we're going to do right now, if I could actually find it, here it is. What we're going to do right now is a bit of review. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to do a bit of visual review. Hurry up, eye muscle. All right, so first things first, let's take a look at the muscles responsible for shoulder flexion. You might be saying, what the heck? I have no context for this. First thing I want you to do, take your arm, go into shoulder flexion. Think about the muscles that are there and try to remember what we spoke about. So shoulder flexion, there are 3 muscles involved with this lift. Can someone name me one of them? At home or online? James. Pectoralis major. That's going to be this guy right here. The pectoralis major. The pectoralis major had 2 fibers, 2 directions of the fibers. Does anyone remember the name specifically of the directions? The clavicular fibers, which are going to be up here. Clavicular fibers of the pectoralis major. They run underneath the collarbone. And then what was the other one? Someone at home, do you know the other name?
Sternal fibers.
Sternal fibers. Sternal fibers or sternocostal. You'll also hear them referred to as sternocostal as well. But yeah, those are the fibers that run adjacent to our breastbone. All right, so that's one muscle of shoulder flexion. What else do we have? The deltoid. Where was that deltoid located? But what was the term we used to describe where it was located? Yeah, anterior, the anterior deltoid. It's gonna be right here. Anterior deltoid. And then last but not least, we had one more muscle. That was the synergist. Does anyone remember? Right? Biceps brachii, biceps brachii. Biceps brachii is going to be right here. And then we know the muscle that's deep to the bicep is the brachii, the brachialis, which you said. But it's the biceps brachii that's responsible for this shoulder flexion. What was the prime mover of shoulder flexion? Does anyone remember that? Of shoulder flexion, it's going to be the delt. It's going to be the anterior deltoid. So the anterior deltoid is responsible for shoulder flexion. It's the prime mover of that. It is also synergist.
So everything is solid. My question is,
Uh-huh.
how can you determine what is agonist and antagonist?
Well, it's referential. Freddie, you want to answer that?
So if you know, the agonist of the flexion.
Yeah.
And you know the agonist of the extension. That agonist extension is the antagonist of the flexion. For example.
So let me try. I want to bring the online crew into this conversation. Really good conversation happening here on campus. I'm sure you guys can't hear. So James asked the question, how do you know what's an agonist and an antagonist? Well, Freddie started to get into the answer. It was really, really good, by the way. So we said the other day that muscles are dumb. Muscles only do one thing and they only pull. So if we're referring to a specific joint action, let's say flexion, we know that the anterior delt, the pec major, and the biceps are going to be performing flexion. But if we're talking about extension, the antagonist muscles for the joint action extension are going to be all the shoulder extensor muscles. It's going to be all those opposite muscles. So that's how we determine. When we're looking at the agonist, we're looking at one set of muscles that do a joint action, and the antagonist, the opposite joint action, are going to be the antagonist muscles.
So, example, a bicep curl.
Bicep.
Bicep would be the agonist, the antagonist would be triceps.
Well, we wouldn't name an exercise, we'd name the joint action. So an example would be, if we're looking at elbow flexion, the biceps brachii is the prime mover, it's the agonist, and then the antagonist is going to be the triceps.
So, with that being said, the opposite, you do like straight arm, you do pulls. Pulls. The switches.
Yeah. So, and the inverse is true too. So if you are looking at elbow extension, triceps are the prime mover, the antagonist is going to be the bicep.
That's always the case in the part of the body.
Always the case with any part of the body. Anytime you're looking at one joint action, the opposite joint action is going to be the antagonist group. All right.
So as long as I know one part, I will figure out the other. Yeah.
They have to, so for questions, they have to tell you the part they're referring to. Yeah. Okay. All right. So shoulder flexion, we got the joint actions down. What are the three muscles involved with shoulder horizontal flexion? Does anyone remember? I'll give you a hint. We spoke about them already. What are the joint actions involved with shoulder horizontal flexion? Excuse me, the muscles, I should say.
Pectoralis major.
Pec major. Anterior delt. Biceps brachii. What is the prime mover of horizontal flexion? Prime mover. It's going to be the pec. It's going to be the pec. Okay, so for shoulder flexion, nope. So for shoulder flexion, the prime mover is going to be this anterior delt. Shoulder flexion is this guy, right? For shoulder horizontal flexion, this guy, that's going to be the pec major. Prime mover is going to be your pec major. Okay, now let's speak about the shoulder extensors. Shoulder extension, just so we're clear. We start here, we end up back here. Okay? 3 new muscles. What, does anyone know the first one? Yes, James.
So based on what we said,
Uh-huh.
so it would be the posterior deltoid,
Yeah,
okay? And the two more, right?
2 more. Yeah, there's 3 muscles in this group.
Yes, I know the sesame dorsi.
Latissimus dorsi, beautiful. So we have the posterior delt, the back-facing delt, the latissimus dorsi, and then what's the opposite muscle of the bicep? It's gonna be the tricep. It's gonna be the triceps brachii. So again, notice every one of those muscles has their opposite for the opposite joint action. What, this one? That's the latissimus dorsi. So the pecs and the latissimus dorsi are opposites. They're antagonists with each other. The front shoulder and the back shoulder are opposites. They're antagonists. And then the bicep and the tricep are opposites. You see how that works? And then one group does flexion, one group does extension. What about for horizontal extension? Oh, wait, what's the prime mover of shoulder extension? Who remembers? Prime mover for shoulder extension. Shoulder extension.
Latissimus dorsi.
Latissimus dorsi, latissimus dorsi. So just to, I don't like to say this because it's not always true. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But for most of the joint actions and the muscles, usually the biggest muscle is the prime mover. But that's not always true. So don't think that that's always true. But you notice this is the biggest muscle of the 3, so that's going to be the prime mover. But for horizontal extension, again, this is not really true here. What are the 3 muscles? Latissimus dorsi is 1. Posterior delt. Oh, posterior delt's here. Posterior delt's there, and then the triceps, right? So the prime mover is going to be, yeah, this one's the posterior delt. This one is the posterior delt. Okay. So now let's take a look at shoulder abduction. Shoulder abduction. We had 2 muscles, and we had a really unique set of rules. In fact, Alexander said these rules earlier. So what are the 2 muscles? Does anyone know the 2 muscles involved with abduction? Deltoid, medial delt, beautiful, the medial deltoid. So the medial deltoid. And then there's one more muscle.
You're talking about the shoulder adductors,
AB. AB. The shoulder abduction is one more muscle. We spoke about it. It also was in charge of another muscle group, or it also is in another muscle group, I should say.
Supraspinatus.
Supraspinatus. Supraspinatus. Supraspinatus is going to be right here on both sides. Let's get the other side. That's the supraspinatus. This muscle is also part of the rotator cuff, right? AB. Supraspinatus and the medial deltoid. Now, what was the weird rule that we spoke about as far as the prime mover? Not that rule. The 15-degree rule. What did we say about that, Damon? Well, what starts as the prime mover? In the beginning, it's going to be this little guy. In the beginning, first 15 degrees of shoulder abduction. That means we have our arms like down here, from here to about here. The supraspinatus is in charge, is the prime mover. Then after 15 degrees, the medial delt takes over and becomes the prime mover. So first 15 degrees, this little guy is the prime mover. Then after 15 degrees, this guy becomes the prime mover. All right, now let's take a look at shoulder adduction. Shoulder adduction.
So before we continue,
Uh-huh.
what's that sentence?
What's the who?
What's the agonist and antagonist, right? You know,
What is the agonist?
well, we just talked about the agonist, which is prime mover, right?
Yes, the prime mover is the agonist.
What's the muscle opposite of that? That's for the.
So the muscle opposite of shoulder abduction. So we don't look at opposites of muscles. In this instance, we look at opposite joint actions. So the opposite of abduction is going to be adduction. So now we're taking a look at those muscles. That's actually what I'm asking. So what are the two muscles that are involved with adduction? So remember, abduction is this, right? And then the opposite of this is this. So the muscles responsible for doing that, what is it? The latissimus dorsi and the pec. What's the weird thing about this relationship? Force couple relationship. So what does that mean? Yeah, they're both working at the same time. They're both working at the same time to create that joint action. Why can't I spin this thing? So both the pec and the lats are both activating in order to manipulate that arm into adduction. Cool. All right, so let's take a look at the rotator cuff muscles. We have 4 rotator cuff muscles. We had a nice little acronym that we learned called SITS. Does anyone know the one of the 4 muscles? We spoke about it already. Supraspinatus, supraspinatus. Supraspinatus is right here. And then we had the muscle that's in opposition of the supraspinatus. This one is superior. The other one is more inferior. That's going to be the infraspinatus. Oh, no, that's not the infraspinatus. Infraspinatus is going to be right here. Infraspinatus. So supraspinatus is up here. Infraspinatus is going to be at a layer here. Supra and infra. And then we had 2 more. Teres minor, which is this little thing here. And then we had 1 more that is not currently shown. Not the finger ones, not the finger muscles. Yeah, that one is deep. Subscapularis. The subscapularis is located in between. No, not here. Sorry. Subscapularis is located in between the rib cage and the shoulder blades. So the shoulder blades are here. You can see that. The rib cage is here. The subscap is in between those two, inserting into the rotator cuff. So everyone see that at home? Cool. Now, what are the joint actions associated with each of these muscles? So for the first one, supraspinatus, we said it does what? We said it earlier. Yeah, abduction. Abduction, first 15 degrees, right? Then we said the infraspinatus does what?
External rotation.
Yeah, it's going to be external rotation. So this is going to be external rotation. Teres minor is also going to do external rotation. And then the last one, the subscap, that's going to be responsible for internal rotation of the shoulder. So remember, Damon, we said that the muscles that do adduction, those are what and what? Pec and the lats. Pec and the lats do adduction. Supraspinatus for the first 15 degrees does your abduction. So again, just to go over the rotator cuff muscles and their movements, that does abduction, first 15 degrees. That does external rotation, the infraspinatus, that is. The teres minor also does external rotation, and then the subscap does internal rotation. Okay, now let's take a look at the joint actions of the scapula. Joint actions of the scapula. So starting with elevation, two muscles in charge of elevation are called what? The two muscles that are responsible for elevation. Yeah, the upper fibers of the traps. So the upper fibers of the traps are going to be one, and then the other one's easy to remember. The levator scapulae. Levator scapulae is going to be right here, excuse me. Levator scapulae. 1 and 2 on both sides. And then we said the levator scapulae was deep to these upper fibers of the traps. What about for depression? What about for depression? What are the three muscles that are responsible for depression? Where specifically on the traps? Yeah, you know. It's depression, so it's got to be. Let's say what? Distal? No, not distal. Not distal. That's the wrong word. If you're not high, what are you? Low. So where do you think these be located? Yeah, lower fibers of your traps. The lower fibers of your traps is one. And then the two other ones, these were a little bit unique. These ones were a little bit unique as far as their location. Freddie, you mentioned one of these muscles earlier. Do you remember the name of that muscle? I'll point to it if you can say the name. This muscle right here? Yeah, it's not called the finger. It starts with an S. Serratus anterior, the serratus anterior, aka the finger muscles. Those finger muscles. What's up?
Can you show on the screen upper fibers and where they are?
Of the traps?
Yeah.
So the upper fibers are up at the base of the neck. Lower fibers are down here. And you notice how big the lower fibers are? They're super large, super large. So these are the upper, these are the middle, and these are the lower. And you can see they have different lines of pull. Like these sort of pull up towards the neck, these sort of pull towards the center, and these pull down. So that
Whole thing is traps.
that whole thing is your traps. Yeah, different sections. Okay, so for depression, we said the lower fibers of the traps. We said the serratus anterior. We had one more muscle. I'll give you a hint. It is not a major deal. Yeah, minor. It's something minor. What is it? Yeah, the pec minor. Pec minor. The pec minor is located how in relation to the pec major? Deep. Yeah, that's right. The pec minor is deep to the pec major. Yeah. So again, three muscles responsible for depression, pec minor. Oh God, I didn't mean to do that. So again, pec minor, serratus anterior, and then lower fibers of the traps. Now let's take a look at protraction. What muscles are responsible for rounding the shoulder blades forward? The pecs? Is that a complete answer? I don't think so. There are two different types of pecs we learned about. We learned about a major and a minor. Which one is going to be?
So if this were scapular retraction, right? So pectoralis major.
No. Protraction we're talking about right now.
Yeah, but put it all together.
Okay.
Retraction, one of the muscle groups that's responsible for that would be pectoralis major.
Nope. let's hold off on that for now. So for protraction, what's happening when we round the shoulder blades forward? Yeah, the shoulder blades are coming towards the front of your body. So where would those muscles have to be located? Not the traps. Traps are in the back. They have to be, yeah, it have to be anterior. So it's going to be this pec minor, and then it's going to be this serratus anterior. Pec minor, serratus anterior are responsible for protraction of your scapula. And now, James, when we talk about retraction of the scapula, knowing what we know on where muscles need to be located in order to pull the shoulder blades together, where would those muscles have to be located? Posteriorly, and specifically where? In order to pull the shoulder blades together, if I have two chairs up by my sides and I need to pull them together, where do I have to be? I got a chair here. I got a chair here. I'm pulling them in. I got to be in the middle of the chairs. So the muscles have to be in the middle of the scapula. So that's where they're going to be. What muscles are the ones in the middle of the scapula? The traps, beautiful, middle fibers of the traps. And then we have one more muscle, starts with an R. It's right here. Does anyone know this muscle name? Kind of looks like salmon, like sockeye salmon. Yes, the rhomboids. Rhomboids are here. No, the rhomboids are deep to your traps. And again, they do scapular retraction. All right, last but not least, we have two more upper body joints. So the first one is responsible for elbow flexion. What muscles are responsible for that? Freddie said one earlier. Biceps brachii. Biceps brachii. And then there's one more. What's the other muscle deep to the biceps brachii? Brachialis. Brachialis. And then finally, what's the muscle responsible for elbow extension? Triceps. The triceps.
So, on the quiz,
Uh-huh.
they asked us about protraction, or they asked about retraction. You have to specify the middle fibers. when we talk about-
Yeah, you have to specify the specific fiber direction of the joint action you're referring to. For instance, if you're talking about the traps, well, there are three different fiber directions that the traps run in. So you got to say that specific part of the traps you're referring to. Same thing with the pecs. The pecs can run this way or this way, and depending on the fiber direction, it could be a prime mover of a joint action. So you have to specify if it asks you to. Also, here's another question that you're going to see on the test that a lot of people tend to get wrong, if, of course, I don't bring it up in discussion. What joint does the pectoralis act on? The answer is that's a trick question, because just like I was just saying, we have to specify what part of the pecs we're talking about. So if I say the pec major, what joint does the pec major act on? The shoulder joint. If I say the pec minor, what joint does the pec minor act on? Yeah, scapula. The shoulder girdle or the scapula. Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, good review. Let's learn some new stuff. So now we're going to take a look at the lower body. And we're going to start with the hip. So there's actually a definition we need to know for this lesson. And it always confuses me why we learn it here, because actually there are some muscles in the upper body that are in this same category as well. Anyway, the term we're going to learn is called biarticular muscle. So a biarticular muscle is just a muscle that crosses two joints. So a muscle that crosses between two joints. So we actually took a look at a bunch of biarticular muscles earlier when we were looking at the upper body. Can someone name me one biarticular muscle? The pec. Again, we can't just say pec.
It will be bicep.
Yes, it would be the biceps. The biceps run through the shoulder and they run through the elbow. And they're responsible for shoulder flexion and elbow flexion. What about another one? Not the pec major, not the pec minor. Pec major only acts on the shoulder. What about? I'm sorry? Deltoid? That one, yeah, technically yes, but no, just because of we want to say the specific part of the delt that's doing a specific joint action. So we're going to leave that one off our list for now. What about the tricep? Tricep acts on the shoulder and the elbow as well. What about that one? That one works as well. Traps. Depends on the fibers. Depends on the fibers. Middle traps only act on the scapula. Lats, they act on the shoulder and the scapula. Wait, no. No, they don't. Just the shoulder. They only act on the shoulder. All right, good. So anyway, biarticular muscles are muscles that cross two joints. We need to know this. This is going to be a test question on Wednesday. And a bunch of the muscles in the leg, they are biarticular muscles. So we're going to learn all about that. So the first group of muscles we're going to learn about are going to be the muscles responsible for extension of your hip. Extension of your hip. So the hip extensor muscles are two muscle groups. So two separate muscle groups. You have your glute muscle group, which is consistent of your gluteus maximus and your gluteus medius. So let's take a look at those. Gluteus maximus, I'm sure we all know. You know, it doesn't really look like this guy has much of a gluteus maximus. He's really flat here, but that's okay. You can still see the location. So that's the gluteus maximus. That's one of the biggest muscles in the body. And then the gluteus medius is going to be right on the side. The gluteus medius is going to be responsible for all of your sort of adduction movements, your step outs, you're moving laterally. So soccer players, they tend to have really well-developed gluteus maximus and gluteus mediuses because they're always moving side to side. And then also, we have the hamstring muscles. The hamstring muscles are made up of three muscles. So we have this big, thick muscle here in the hamstring. That's called the biceps femoris. Biceps, like two heads. Femoris, like acting on the femur, right? Femur is the movable bone of the hip. So the biceps, the two-headed muscle, acts on the femur. Then we have two other muscles. We have a muscle called the semitendinosus, and then a little bit more deep, we have a muscle called the semimembranosus. So biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. All three members of the hamstrings group. So when people say they're hamstrings, they're actually referring to these three muscles: biceps femoris, tendinosus, and then the semimembranosus.
So I assume they all have a different role in the hamstring.
Nope, you don't have to think about their specific roles. Just know that all three of them are a part of the hamstrings. And also, this hamstring muscle group is a biarticular muscle group. Yes. Yep. Uh-huh.
When you're strengthening the hamstring, how does the same membrane, the regular strengthening develop?
So
Or is it
for now, for this level, like on where we're at, because we're learning so much, I don't really want you to concern yourself with the actual individual roles of these three muscle groups. Just know that they all work together and they all help with that hip extension as well as knee flexion, as we learn. But don't really worry about what is doing most of the work. Don't really worry. There is a prime mover in this specific group. Don't worry about it. Not for now. Don't worry about it for now.
So
Just for now, just know that these three muscles make up the hamstrings. Yes. By the way, the prime mover of hip extension are going to be two muscle groups, if you will. It's going to be the gluteus maximus and the hamstrings group. So we're going to consider all three muscles the prime mover of hip extension, as well as the gluteus maximus. So only the glute medius is not a prime mover. It is only strictly a synergist. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. So the three muscles of hip extension are the gluteus maximus, the gluteus medius, and the hamstring group, which are made up of the biceps femoris, the semitendinosus, and the semimembranosus. Those three muscles make up the biceps group, the hamstrings group, and both the hamstrings group and the gluteus maximus are prime movers of hip extension. Also, the hamstrings are a biarticular muscle, meaning what? They cross two joints. What two joints do they cross? Hip and the knee. Hip and the knee, right? Because the hamstrings are responsible for a knee flexion. All right. So what's the opposite of hip extension? Hip flexion. So let's learn the hip flexors. Hip flexor muscles. So if these are on the back side for extension, where are the hip flexor muscles going to be located? Anteriorly. They're going to be located on the front side. That's why when we do that hip flexor stretch, we bring our leg out in front of us, right? Same thing, same reason. So yes, James.
So right now, we just wanted to focus on what muscle groups is responsible for hip flexion, hip extensions like that. We don't want to focus personally what each muscle group is responsible for. We just want us to focus on the actual muscle groups in general. So right now, we talk about hip flexors.
So yeah, the reason why we started out talking about the joint actions is so we can talk about the muscles in context of the joint actions, because the joint actions ultimately are the way the body moves, and that's how we exercise. So yeah, this is all layering information on top of the previous lesson. So that's what we're doing here. All right, so hip flexion, three muscles. First muscle is going to be another one of those muscle groups. It's called your iliopsoas. And the iliopsoas is made up of a muscle called your psoas major. Psoas major. And then we have a muscle called the iliacus. Let me put those muscles up on the board so you can get the correct names. So iliopsoas is the muscle group. First, hold on. First muscle is going to be the psoas major, which is located right here. And then the last muscle is going to be, oops, not that one, but this one. It's going to be your iliacus. So the iliacus and the psoas major make up the iliopsoas muscle group. Guess what? Your iliopsoas is also going to be a biarticular muscle group. So we're looking at hip flexion. So this is going to be crossing through the hip. And then the other muscle, the other joint that it crosses, I should say, is actually going to be your spine. So we're going to talk about this later when we speak about hip flexion, trunk flexion. Think about it. In order to bend towards your hip, you would need a muscle that pulls your spine towards that hip. And the iliopsoas is responsible for that. But we're going to talk about that later. All right, second muscle in your hip flexor group. This muscle is called your sartorius. It runs from the top of your hip and it goes all the way across your leg, right through your knee. So this is also going to be biarticular. Crosses the hip and the knee. So they call the sartorius muscle, this muscle right here, they call this muscle the talar muscle. And the reason why they call it the talar muscle is because talars sit cross-legged. They sit in this cross-legged position. And this cross-legged position is a really big stretch for that sartorius muscle. I don't know if you guys have tried to sit cross-legged. Some people can do it with no problem. I used to be able to do it no problem when I was like 10. But now if I try it, I'm like, ooh, that's a stretch. You're stretching that sartorius. Yeah, crisscross. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, so last but not least, the last muscle responsible for hip flexion are going to be your quadricep muscle. Quadricep muscles, I should say. Quadricep muscles are also another muscle group. Excuse me. I lied. Let's take that back. So there's going to be one muscle in the quadriceps group that is responsible for hip flexion. And that's going to be the rectus femoris muscle of your quadricep group. So the rectus femoris is responsible for hip flexion as well as being a part of your quadricep muscles. Quad meaning four. There are four muscles in this group. So you got the rectus femoris, you got the vastus lateralis, you got the vastus medialis, and then you got the vastus intermedialis, which is deep to the rectus femoris. So just to recap, three muscles, say what? Yeah, only the rectus femoris does hip flexion. So just to recap, for hip flexion, these are the muscles involved. We got the iliopsoas, made up of the psoas major and the iliacus. Psoas major and the iliacus here. We got that sartorius muscle. And then we got the rectus femoris of the quadricep group? Everyone following so far? The other parts of the quadricep don't do hip flexion. They do knee extension, which we're going to learn about. So the other parts of the quads don't do hip flexion. Just the rectus femoris does hip flexion. All right, now let's take a look at the knee. So we mentioned that the rectus femoris and the sartorius are biarticular, right? They both cross the hip and the knee. Sartorius, hip in the knee. Rectus femoris, hip in the knee.
And you said the eye also like,
Say what?
yeah,
The iliopsoas?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
but also,
Yeah, the iliopsoas is biarticular, but hip and spine. Hip and spine. So now let's talk about the prime movers of hip flexion. It's going to be this big rectus femoris, as well as that iliopsoas group. So the rectus femoris is prime mover of hip flexion, as well as that iliopsoas muscle group. Iliopsoas. Prime movers for hip flexion are going to be the rectus femoris. So this big muscle here. And then the iliopsoas group. So we have the psoas major and the iliacus. Those two muscles together form the iliopsoas, and they are also a prime mover of hip flexion. See what I mean when I say index cards really come handy? It's a lot to sort of get, but once you repeat it in your mind a bunch, you'll understand it. And it makes sense. If you can also get an app and take a look at the anatomy and where things are located, it all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. Okay. Let's take a look at our next muscle group. This is you guys know the famous chef Gordon Ramsay? He used to be a bodybuilder back in the day.
so,
Gordon Ramsay.
Does any does anyone know who this is?
It's Jay Cutler.
Yes, that's Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler's a bodybuilder. It's not Gordon Ramsay. All right, now let's take a look at the adductors of the hip. So the adductors of the hip, they all have weird names. Let's face it, they all have really funny names. But it actually works out pretty conveniently because they make a really funny acronym that make this really easy to remember. So the hip adductor muscles are going to be the pectineus, the adductor brevis, the adductor longus, the adductor magnus, and the gracilis. So what I like to use to remember all of these muscles, these 5 muscles, is an acronym that goes peanut butter leaves me greasy. Peanut butter, PB. So we ignore adductor. We don't need that part. PBLMG. Peanut butter leaves me greasy. Pectineus, brevis, longus, magnus, and gracilis. So just take a second, write that down, write down these names. I'll show you the muscles after you've gotten everything written down. Oops, sorry. All right, so now let's take a look at these muscle locations. So again, these are the hip adductors. So where do you think they'd be located?
Side,
So they're responsible for adduction. So where would they be? They'd be on one side. Would they be closer to the spine or further away from the spine? They'd be more lateral. Think about that for adduction. Yeah, would they be on this side or this side? This side?
the inner thigh.
Yeah, inner thigh. So let's take a look at these. We have the pectineus. Nope, sorry, the pectineus is up here. Pectineus. And then we got the adductor longus. And then we got the adductor brevis. Brevis is going to be here. These muscles are hard to get the locations for. These are, when people are talking about the growing muscles, these are the growing muscles. These are the growing muscles they're talking about. So the pectineus, the adductor brevis, longus, peanut butter, leaves, and then deep here, and then gracilis. Gracilis is going to be in there somewhere. Let's see if we can find it. Nope. Peanut butter. All right, I'm going to cheat and look it up. Let me see. Gracilis is going to be here. Let's see where I can find it. I don't know. This one's hard to find. The gracilis. I'm trying to find it. I know you guys don't care. I'm just trying to find it for myself. Nope. Oops. I did have it. I don't know where. It's deep.
It's the longest one that's most medial.
Longest one that's most medial. This one? No. Oh yeah, it is this one. Ah, it was looking right at me this whole time. Yes, the gracilis is going to be here. Cool. So yeah, those are your hip adductor muscles. For you guys, we're not really concerned about the locations. As you can tell, they're kind of hard to pick out. They're not going to be anything like diagrams or anything like that on your tests, but we will do stuff like that to review. It just won't be for these adductor muscles. It'll be for like pecs, lats, delts, traps, those type of muscles. So yeah, all you need to know is all of the muscle names. Just use that acronym. Peanut butter leaves me greasy. Okay. All right, now let's take a look at the hip abductors. So for the hip abductors, we have a few new muscles that we're going to learn. So we have a muscle, the sartorius, which we've learned about, that talar muscle. Again, we have that gluteus medius. We also have the gluteus minimus, and a muscle that's on the side of our leg called the TFL, the tensor fascia lata. So let's look up the locations of those. So hip abductors. So I'm trying to put this on the side so you guys can still write. Sartorius. Gluteus medius. Gluteus minimus. And then a muscle called the TFL, tensor fascia lata. So do you remember, did we ever foam roll our TFL together?
No.
I don't think we did. I think I had to go over something else. So no, that's going to be the outside of your leg. So usually when people foam roll the outside of their leg, like right on the side of the leg, oh, we did do it. Yeah, that is extremely painful for a lot of people. We also did the inner thighs as well, which is also Those are going to be the peanut butter leaves me greasy muscles, those inner thighs. But anyway, one thing to note about that TFL is that it inserts into the iliotibial band, that IT band. Inserts into your IT band. Yeah, a lot of athletes have trouble with their IT band. Did we say, oh yeah, so a few more notes. So we have the sartorius again, biarticular, hip and knee, gluteus medius. So the muscle, the glute muscle on the side. Let me pull up my model again. Glute muscle on the side. This is going to be the prime mover for adduction of your hip. Abduction of your hip, I should say. Abduction of your hip, the prime mover is your gluteus medius. And then the minimus and the TFL are synergists. And we want to know that the TFL inserts into the iliotibial band, that IT band. For adduction, peanut butter leaves me greasy. We don't need to know a prime mover. But for hip abduction, the prime mover is this gluteus medius.
Did you explain the significance of the inserts on the iliotibial band?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about that. I want to hold off on that just for now. Let's get a little more context, and we'll go back to that. But just know that it is a very, very injury prone part of the body. And we're going to talk about why. Yes. Does it insert at the beginning? Yeah, it inserts it right at the top. Right at the top of the hip is where the iliotibial band starts. Let's take 5. Let's come back at 7:06.
The lines on the upper body, are they on the movement?
Should be week 3 or week 4.
The upper body. I was more like a visual guy.
Okie dokie, friends, let's bring it back in. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the knee. So the knee is the reason why I wanted to hold off before talking about the IT band, because essentially what the IT band is, it's a layer of fascia that runs from the top of your hip all the way down to your knee. And the purpose of that is just to support your knee. But we're gonna talk about that in a second. Let's just focus on those knee joint actions and their muscles. So we got the knee flexors. The knee flexors, what do you think they're going to be? What's knee flexion look like? Heel towards your butt, right? So what do you think pulls the tibia towards your butt? The hamstrings. Hamstrings are going to be your knee flexor muscles. They're going to be the prime mover of knee flexion. So the hamstrings are biceps femoris, semimembranosus, semitendinosus. They are the prime mover of knee flexion and the only muscle group with knee flexion. What do you think are your knee extensors? Also a muscle group that we spoke about. Yeah, the quads, the quadriceps. So this time, all four muscles have a job to do. And it's going to be that rectus femoris, which we know is biarticular, runs from the hip and the knee. Then we have the vastus lateralis, the vastus medialis, vastus medialis is down here, and the vastus intermedius, which is underneath the rectus femoris. So let's take a look at that model and spot these muscles. So biceps, we've already looked at a bunch of times. Biceps femoris, semimembranosus, semitendinosus. Quadriceps, we got that rectus femoris. We got the vastus lateralis because it's more lateral, more away from the side, the midline of the body. The vastus medialis and the vastus intermedialis. Intermediate, like middle. Medialis closest to the midline. Intermediate, like in the middle of the three vastus muscles. So those three muscles are going to be your knee extensor muscles. Those four muscles, I should say, are going to be your knee extensors, and they're all the prime mover. And then once again, rectus femoris is biarticular. And there's also one more thing we want to note. This vastus intermedius, this muscle inserts into your patellar tendon. This muscle inserts into your patellar tendon. So speaking of that IT band, so that IT band we can't see because it's a layer of tissue, a fascia, right? It's a layer of tissue that's over our muscle. So pretend there's a big layer running all the way down your knee. And essentially that IT band, it's responsible just for supporting the entire leg and keeping that leg in place. But what tends to happen is because a lot of times we overuse our quadriceps and we do a lot of overstimulation to that muscle group because of things like repetitive exercise, like running and just doing the same thing over and over, doing the same knee extension over and over. A lot of times that IT band becomes inflamed. So it's almost like pretend the IT band is like a string that runs along your leg. What happens is because the muscles become inflamed and they expand, they're like pulling on this string. And that string is becoming a little bit too tight. And that's what's causing, that's what causes people to have pain in that IT band and all of those areas of their knee. And we're going to get into some remedies for that on the practical floor a little bit later on. Not tonight, but at some time. Okay, is everyone okay so far? Knee flexion, hamstrings, knee extension, quadriceps. So now, Jay Cutler again, say hi to Jay. Now we got the ankle. What are the two joint actions of the ankle? Dorsal and plantar flexion. So we're going to take a look at plantar flexion first. The muscles responsible for plantar flexion are your gastrocnemius, your calf. We call it the calf muscle. It's going to be this muscle here. Gastrocnemius has two heads. One that's more towards the midline, more medial. One that's more towards the outer side of your body, more lateral. And then the muscle that's also involved with plantar flexion is called your soleus muscle. Your soleus muscle is deep to the gastrocnemius. Soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius. So here's a model. This is cutting into the gastrocnemius. So the gastrocnemius is on the outside. The soleus is on the inside. Question?
The two heads of the gastrocnemius is still the same name, the one separate name.
Yeah, there's still the gastrocnemius.
Okay.
Their names specifically are the gastrocnemius medial and the gastrocnemius lateral, but you don't need to know that. And then the soleus, one thing we want to note is the soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius, and then both of these muscles insert into your Achilles tendon. Your Achilles tendon is this white part down here. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of Achilles, in Greek mythology, but they shot his ankle with an arrow so he wouldn't run fast or he wouldn't fly or something. I don't know. Couldn't run? Yeah. They shot his ankle and he couldn't run. And that part of our body is named after the tendon that both of these muscles are inserted into. Soleus is also the strongest muscle by, there's an asterisk next to that.
Yeah.
So not strongest in like sheer amount that it could resist against, but strongest in terms of the size comparison to the amount that it lifts.
Hold a lot of weight. So as soon as strong.
Yeah, exactly. He's holding all of your body's weight when you're standing up, so it's got to be super strong.
If somebody had a high ankle sprain, it would be because
High ankle sprain. is going to be due to that insertion by the knee. Okay, is everyone okay? Let's take a look at dorsiflexion. One muscle for dorsiflexion. It's going to be a muscle called your tibialis, the tibialis anterior. So the tibialis muscle, obviously, it's located on the front side of your leg. There is only one exercise that you can do that works your tibialis. And it's actually a pretty good exercise to do if you're someone that is, you know, has athletic aspirations, because it tends to be a very underutilized muscle. So that's going to be a tibialis raise. So tibialis raise is going to have you stand up against a wall, and you're going to just lift your feet to your, like, try to lift them towards your shin. And you're just going to go for like 50 reps at a time. You can do like 2 or 3 sets of 50 or 25. Yeah, those definitely help with shin splints. A lot of times people, first of all, a lot of times people don't even feel into this muscle group because a lot of the things that we do sort of make it so densely wound that we can't even, like, most people don't even know they have muscles in the front of their shin bone. But doing things like that tibialis raise will definitely provide better blood flow and better, like, feeling and sensation into that part of your body. Yeah. No, that's gastroc. Gastroc is the gas pedal.
So, if someone does have shin splints,
Uh-huh.
like, what area are they weak in? The reason why they have to go through
Shin
that?
splints are literally a sprain in this tibialis anterior.
Oh,
It's literally a sprain. So a sprain is just the muscle is damaged slightly, and you just gotta deal with it. Basically, you gotta, like, nurse it back up. Yeah, basically. So when we learn about, like, what actually happens at a microscopic level to our muscles, like when we're working out, actually what happens is the muscles are continuously stretching and contracting. And then what happens as a result of that is they eventually tear. Like, the fibers actually tear apart, like strings would tear apart if you kept pulling them constantly. And then all we have to do is just sleep and eat the right food, eat a lot of protein. And that's what's going to repair those muscle tissues, those fibers. And then they'll be more resistant to being pulled a bunch of times. Okay, so let's take a look at the muscles of the trunk. So for trunk flexion, what is trunk flexion again? Crunch, yes, like a crunch. So for trunk flexion, there are 2 muscles involved with that joint action. Those 2 muscles are going to be, well, that's actually 3 muscles. Those 3 muscles are going to be your psoas major, which we spoke about. That was the muscle that inserts into the hip and into your spine. Again, it says here, this muscle is unique because it moves the femur, because we know the femur is the movable bone of the hip, right? Then we have another muscle called your rectus abdominis. That's your 6-pack muscle. That's the actual 6-pack muscle. By the way, everyone's 6-pack looks like a nice 6-pack. The reason why we don't see a 6-pack on every person is because they have a layer of subcutaneous fat, which is over that muscle. And when that layer of fat starts to decrease and starts to become not as much fat, what happens is we're able to see through it and see the muscle underneath. Yeah, you got to trim the fat. And it's not necessarily, so we're not, when people say, this is a quick aside, when people say they need to lose fat, we're actually not losing fat. what's happening is we're making our fat cells smaller. So people that are very obese, their fat cells are very enlarged, they're very big. And then when people start to reduce their body fat, their fat cells become smaller. So you're actually not losing fat. Yeah, you always have fat. There's a evolutionary reason for having fat. Fat is supposed to be like a storage of energy. So when we were evolving in like caves and we were in tribes and back in the day, like back when we were like hunter-gatherers, we didn't have access to food like we do now. Like we couldn't go out to the store and get a sandwich and get some chips. Like there was no store. And we would go days at a time sometimes without eating. So our body came up with this mechanism of storing fat to ensure that we'd have enough energy to run our body without just like dying without food, because we weren't guaranteed our next meal. But at this point of our timeline, we have these systems in place which allow us to get food pretty easily. So now we overconsume food. Well, there are many biologic reasons why we eat, and there are many reward systems that's tied to eating. So like when we eat, we feel good. Like literally our brain makes us feel good when we eat. So that's sort of the conundrum people struggle with when they're trying to lose fat. Well, we can. Whether we should or whether we want to are two way different things. So if you're someone that's looking to increase your muscle mass, like you're going to need to eat, because eating is the way that we repair. If we provide our body the building blocks to repair the damaged muscle from exercise. So we need to eat if we want to build muscle. But do we need to eat every day? No, we don't technically need to eat every day. As long as we have sufficient fat storages, we can get away without eating. Is that something most people want to do? Hell friggin' no. Hell no. We want to eat. And eating is good. So eat. Okay. So psoas major moves the spine, moves the hip. Rectus abdominis, prime mover of trunk flexion. It's your six-pack muscle. And then we have two other muscles. Your internal and external obliques. So let's take a look at actually all these muscles right now. Let's put our layers on. How do I get them back to normal? Let me just do this. Yeah, I'm just. All right, so I'm gonna cut down a few layers. So first off, we have that psoas major. Excuse me, psoas major is going to be a layer up. Oh my God. Psoas major is here. So again, this is the muscle that moves your femur and moves your spine. Then we have the rectus abdominis. That's your six-pack muscle. And then over the top, a layer over the top of these muscles are actually your obliques. So we have your internal obliques and then your external obliques, which are on top of the internal oblique. So your abs have three coated layers. So the bottommost layer is actually your six-pack. Then on top of that is the internal oblique. Then on top of that is the external oblique. The obliques are what's responsible for rotation. The obliques are responsible for rotation. So you might ask, what does that have to do with trunk flexion? And why does that matter when we're crunching? Well, when we're crunching, both of those muscles are working together to keep the spine in alignment, to keep the spine from rotating and twisting. So they both activate to keep our spine straight. Yes, James.
So when it comes to genetics, some people may have different abs, may have different abs,
Uh-huh.
Does that come down to just the body adapting to a certain type of mode? Or just move forward with it because in your genetic makeup, it just happens to be in there?
Wait. So I just want to understand like the basis of your question. So what do you,
So I'm asking like for example, like I have a lot of people friends. For some reason they have big abs. It don't work out. They
Yeah.
have big abs.
genetically speaking, different types of people have different features, and that's all based on their lineage and evolution. So like if you lived in a place, for instance, like Africa, generally speaking, people of African descent tend to be taller, they tend to be thinner, and that's just the genome of that people because they're adapting to their environment versus people that are shorter, like Eskimos are really short. And that's because they want to sort of compact everything. So it makes me wonder where the hell my lineage is from, because I'm like super short, but I'm also of like African descent. So it's like, what's going on there? But anyway, I digress. But yeah, that's what it comes down to.
So when it comes to like the bees, or they would be bees, the plants.
Uh-huh.
Tap on muscle.
Yeah,
Is there a certain limit?
There is.
Tap on muscle?
There is. There is. So this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the course, but we all have a genetic limit to the amount of muscle we can put on our body. We all have a set cap by birth that we have. Just like you can't grow any taller than you're meant to grow, just like you can't, I don't know. I guess that's the only other one that's sort of analogous, but we all have a genetic cap on the amount of muscle we can have. Here's some good news though. 99% of people are way further off on being close to that genetic cap than they actually think. So we always can make even more improvements to ourselves. There's never a point, usually, for the average person, there's never a point where they are at their genetic cap. It's very hard to do, number one. And also, if you wanted to overseed that cap, there are things you can do and ways of going about that. For instance, you can do things like testosterone replacement and TRT, basically steroids. I'm not saying people should do that. I'm not saying it's healthy, but I'm saying it's possible. That's all I'm saying here. Uh-huh.
Like look at big biceps, big triceps.
Yeah.
I want to do that. And how can you like communicate that to like you can have more defined upper body, but to get to like a bodybuilder like you just seen, because there's a different type of training and it's certain type of limit that your body may have to reach.
Right. So yeah, this is actually a really good conversation. By the way, it looks like we're not going to be able to finish up every single slide. So we're going to spend a portion of practical here finishing up this lesson, just so we're all prepared for the weekend and we're totally done. But anyway, where was I talking? So it's important to know that we are all unique individuals and we all have a unique body. Like we all have a unique body. And it's important to sort of keep people in the mindset that they should be working towards their best body. So whatever that means for them. So if you look at traditional bodybuilders, first of all, bodybuilders use a lot of exogenous substances. They're on steroids, they're on TRT, they're on human growth hormone. That stuff allows you to oversee the natural limitations of the human body. So that's why people like Arnold, people like Jay Cutler that we just saw, that's how they're able to develop those freakish physiques. I'm sorry? Yeah, The Rock too. That's how they can develop those freakish looking physiques. So it's important to know that the average person that wants to look like that, they have to know that they are not going to just look like that just from working out really hard. They're going to have to do a lot of other stuff. And then secondly, it's also important to not really get in the mood of comparing yourself to others. Like, oh, I want really big biceps like this guy that I see. Like, our body type may not be our body type may not be meant for us to have really big biceps. We might instead have really big lats or really big glutes. But I'm saying that to say that we do have something, we do have something that can be very appeasing and very unique for us, but we shouldn't try to go for what other people have.
Yeah, there's some people who think that person on switch and we know how to achieve a certain body.
Yeah,
Our clients.
no, that's definitely true. So that's also a really good point too, Freddie. So just to repeat for everybody at home, Freddie mentioned that, you know, if you take a body type like a swimmer versus someone that does an activity like running, for instance, those are two very unique stimuluses on the body, and they have two very different results as far as the physique develops. Swimmers tend to be a little bit more muscular. They're using their full body every time they're swimming, versus running. Running tends to be less powerful, but higher duration type of exercise. So that means your muscles aren't going to be as big and dense, but you're going to be more slender as a result of that. Muscle's not great for developing. Running is not great for developing muscle, by the way. If you want to pack on muscle and build bigger muscle tissue, you're going to be better suited with resistance training. Not saying running is bad. People that run love it, and that's cool. I'm not someone that loves running, but that's bias. But you know, that's just the facts of things. Not saying that runners have bad bias, because they do not by any means. But yeah. Okay, so let's continue on. Yeah, we're gonna take a look at the trunk extension. Just give me 1 second in case he's texting me. Okay, trunk extensors. 3 muscles involved with trunk extension. So we have a muscle called the erector spinae. The erector spinae muscle. We also have a muscle called the QL. And then Then we also have a muscle called the multifidi, which I'm going to show you in just a second. All right, so erector spinae muscles. Erector spinae muscles are actually a group of muscles, but we just don't call them by their actual names. So they actually are comprised of these 2 muscles here. But we're just going to know them as the erector spinae muscles. We also have the QL, quadratus lumborum. Quadratus lumborum. So this is going to be your quadratus lumborum here. Again, responsible for trunk extension. And then the multifidi. It's going to be right up here. So erector spinae is going to be these guys on the side. Multifidi is going to be on the middle. And then the QL is going to be here. Yeah, sorry. All right, let's take a look at the lateral flexors. Actually, let's not. This is going to take too long. Let's not take a look. Let's just save it for break. For now, what I will do is I'm going to print out those sheets that are going to be a lifesaver for us for this lesson. So for friends at home, you guys are going to get the doc right now. I'm sorry, did you guys still need the screen? Is everyone okay? No? Okay, cool. I'll leave the screen up for you guys though. Where is the chat? There it is. So I'm gonna give you guys some cheat sheets. This is your upper body. This is your lower body and core. Everything that's on this sheet is pretty much everything you need to know. Aside from some other little nuances. And then I'm gonna print these for you all here on campus. 2, 3, 6. So yeah, this sheet's gonna show you all the joint actions, the muscles that do that joint action, and all the prime movers. It's pretty useful to help remember this stuff.
Is the point right from ball the area where athletes.
Yep.
injure-
Athletes and old people.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, no, it sounds so familiar, like, well.
The QL is a very,
Yeah.
no, not the ACL, the ACL, no. The QL, that is often a part of the body that is related to low back pain and injury.
Right,
Here you go, James.
The longer we study these, we'll be fine with that.
Study these, you'll be like 90% of the way there. The other 10% is all the little nuances we spoke about. Like the biarticular muscles, just all that little stuff that we mentioned already. Oh, wait, so. For the core, for the lower body and the core, underneath extensors, put QL. If QL is not written. QL actually got printed out on this other page, which is kind of weird. So write QL underneath trunk extension, quadratus lumborum. All right, okay, 8:02. We're gonna come back together. Let's take a break. I'll see you guys. Hey, Kristen. Am I on? Hey, what's up?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Are you doing okay?
I'm all right.
Good.
I'm all right.
Okay.
Definitely better. I'll be better in 3 to 5 days all the way, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
We missed you last night. Everyone was asking about you.
Well, I miss you guys too. I would much rather be here than there.
All right. Let's bring it in. Crew. Attendance. Oh man. All right. So Freddie, are you here? James, are you here? Damon, are you here? Zane, Matt, no Ty, no Karen, Alex. Is here. No, Audrey. No, Isaiah's here. Oh, sorry, Kristen, are you doing this? I was like
No,
changing
no,
when
you
you.
got it. I saw you in there, so I was like, never mind. I'm slow.
All right. Okie dokie crew, we're gonna finish up this lesson so we're all prepared for the test next week. We're also going to spend the rest of the time we have after we're actually finished. We're gonna actually work on a review sheet for this lesson just to get all these concepts in our mind and again, get us ready for this test. All right, so first things first, let's go back to our PowerPoint. By the way, Kristen, we had a lot of fun last night. We learned about the kettlebell swing and everyone's really sore today. So
Oh, really?
yeah, everyone's really sore as a result. So we're going to continue our kettlebell training on not Monday, but probably Tuesday. We'll go back to it. All right, so sharing screen. We just finished up we just finished up trunk extension. Now we're going to take a look at the lateral flexors. Now, for these lateral flexor muscles, they work in a pretty unique way, which I hope to explain to you all here. So the lateral flexors are going to be both those external and internal obliques. So we took a look at them before. Going to pull up our model up here again. So we said the internal obliques were going to be over the rectus abdominis, and those external obliques are going to be over the top of those. So this is how, I'm sorry, there's also one more muscle which didn't come up, and that's going to be the psoas major. So this is how the lateral flexors work. So the lateral flexors, obviously lateral flexion is when we do that side bend exercise, right? So obviously the side that we're bending to, that's going to be the side that's working. So that's why they say unilaterally. That means just the side that we're bending towards. So that's how the lateral flexors work. So again, internal, external obliques, psoas major, as well as that QL muscle. Is that written on your sheet, by the way? Let me see. Yeah, QL, internal, external obliques, psoas major.
So it's four muscles.
4 muscles. I said 3 before, there's 4. Sorry about that. We also want to note something about the quadratus lumborum. That's the one that I think, Matt, you were asking about that earlier.
Yeah.
That's the one that I was talking about is very frequently injured and people have a lot of issues with that. That's because it does so much for our spine. We consider the QL muscle to be the workhorse of the spine, that quadratus lumborum. That's also going to be your prime mover of lateral flexion. Prime mover of lateral flexion. By the way, I hate when it does this. Hold on, let me, how could I reset it? It just crashed. Hold on. 1 second, Prince. No, it's just this program. It's not optimized for PC. It's optimized for like the phones and stuff, but not for Windows. So the QL, just so you remember where it's located, it's going to be there, right in the lower part of our back.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like, a random question.
Mm-hmm.
Someone get a spinal infusion, that's more to do with the bone, not the muscle.
Spinal infusion. No, there's a lot going on with spinal infusions. I'm actually not even sure all the nuances to spinal infusion. I'm actually curious really quick. How could you describe a spinal infusion to a 5-year-old? We'll see. That's a Chat GPT question. I wish. Let me see. Spinal infusion surgery is to connect 2 or more bones in any part of the spine. Connecting them prevents the movements between them. Okay.
So it's more to do with the bone, not the muscle.
Yeah, it's fusing together the actual bones of your spine to prevent movement. I guess the actual discs are too fractured to work on by themselves.
I do know that that's like the last resort.
Yeah, this is like not something. This is like not something you ever want to do.
Not something.
No, ever. You don't ever want to do this.
Yeah. I mean, I will assume that's the last resort.
All right. Okay, so let's move ourselves on. So we're good with lateral flexion. Freddie, got a question? The serratus anterior. That's your favorite muscle, Freddie. Serratus anterior. What about the serratus anterior? So yeah, so the serratus anterior doesn't act on our spine. It doesn't move our spine. What it moves is our shoulder blades. So remember, we got those floating shoulder blades over all of these layers of tissue. Like the bones are on top. Well, the shoulder blade is on top of that, and it's pulling that shoulder blade forward. It's pulling that shoulder blade forward. Okay, cool. Let's go over rotation. Yeah, I mean, if you were to think about it, it's on the side, and like when you bend to your side, you would think that would work that way. But no, it works. It acts just on that shoulder girdle, that scapula. Say what? Say that one more time. I didn't hear you.
But there's some athletes.
Yeah, so absolutely. So you know who I like to pull up? Do you know who I like to pull up when we're looking at the serratus anterior? I like to pull up a boxer by the name of Manny Pacquiao. Now, I don't know. You can kind of see it, but not really too much. Here is better. Of course, every picture's got to be the smallest picture possible. But yeah, you can see like the fingers. I don't know if he still looks like this today, because apparently he's like the congressman or president of like the Philippines. I don't know if he's the king, but he's a big deal. But yeah. In his prime, he had a really defined serratus anterior. This is what he looks like now. Still pretty good shape. Pac-Man. All right. Lateral flexion. Let's move on to trunk rotation. I'm sorry. I think there was one more thing. Oh, no, we're good. We can move on to trunk rotation. So trunk rotation is going to be another one of those force couple relationships. So remember how we spoke about the force couple relationship being both the muscles are activating to a degree, and their simultaneous activation is manipulating the body in certain ways. So for instance, well, first, let's talk about the two muscles involved with rotation. It's going to be our oblique muscles. And we have two sets of obliques. We have the internal and external oblique. So we took a look at it before, but let's just look again. So rectus femoris, the bottom layer, internal oblique is over that one, and then external oblique is over that one. So how trunk rotation works is it's going to be the side that you rotate to, those internal obliques are going to turn on. And then the opposite side that you're rotating to, those external obliques are turned on. So if I turn to my right side, my right internal oblique is activated. And my left external oblique is activated. And it works vice versa if you go to the opposite side, right? Does that make sense to everyone?
So the term that goes right. No.
So when you turn, if I turn to my left, my internal obliques, so remember the layer over, let me show you. So we got two layers, right? Internal is the top, sorry, that's the tricep. Internal is the top layer. No, internal is the top layer. And then external is over that. So think about it as like wraps. So you have plastic wrap, and then you got another layer of plastic wrap, right? So if you turn to your left internal oblique, so that's going to be the most deep layer, is going to activate. And then the external oblique, which is going to be the more superficial layer, is activating on the opposite side. Does that make sense, everyone? Cool. And then that is a force couple relationship. Those muscles are both pulling the spine in both those directions, and that's what's creating that effect of rotation. So the internal is pulling to the same side that you're rotating to, and then the external is pulling to the opposite side, which is whatever, yeah, right side in this case. So again, if I rotate to my right, this is my right internal oblique and my left external oblique. Okay. So we have one more muscle we're going to talk about in the core. It's a very, 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 very important muscle. It's a muscle that we take for granted. And we don't even really think about it ever existing or actually being a muscle, because this is certainly a muscle. And that's going to be our breathing and compression muscle. It's called the transverse abdominis. And this is the muscle that's responsible for stabilizing our spine. This is the muscle that we are utilizing that brace technique to activate. So when we take that big, deep breath, when we're acting like someone's going to punch us in the stomach, when we're tightening our abs, that's the muscle we're tightening. So that brace technique, there's actually a technical name for the brace technique. It's called the Valvasa maneuver. And that's when we draw in that abdominal wall. We try to tighten up all those layers of muscle around the spine, so our spine becomes immovable. We can't really move it easily.
So this is why they say breathe in. Why you like to do the exercise, and exhale to a hard part.
Good question. Good question.
Contracting, stabilizing the muscle.
James, that's such a good question. Let me try to bring up an example of a really challenging exercise so we can observe exactly what you just said. So James just said, is this the reason why they tell you to breathe in before you do a movement and breathe out during the movement? Yes, that is. But let's see why. Let's see it in action. So we're going to pull up. This exercise is probably going to be one of the most demanding exercises from a stability standpoint that you could ever do. And that's going to be an overhead squat. Let's do barbell overhead squat. All right. So for this barbell overhead squat, there is a lot going on. First thing I want to mention is this is not going to be an exercise that's necessary for everyone. In fact, this is not going to be an exercise that probably a good percentage of your clients can actually do. Like most of your clients, especially your newer clients, some of your more unconditioned clients, and definitely your least mobile clients, so clients that deal with moving their body, that cannot move in a good way, they're not going to even ever touch this ever. So this is going to be for a really small population to start. And that's because the demands on the body are so, there's so many demands on your body. You need so many things to go right. So you're holding a load over your head. You're trying to keep that spine totally straight. And then from there, you're going to go into that squat. So this weight's super light. So that's why you see him not really struggling. He's also pretty mobile. But even if people have light weight, they still tend to struggle with this exercise because of the mobility requirements and because of the lack of stabilization. Like stabilizing your core is a skill. And it's a skill that we get better at over time. So I actually want to find an example where someone's kind of struggling. See if we can find one. I'm sorry? Usually if you go to like the CrossFit videos, they're like struggling. Oh, I know this guy. This is a Chinese Olympic lifter. He's pretty jacked. He's also on a bunch of roids, so don't try to ever aspire to his physique. But he's a monster. He's like 5'3". So I can't even count this high. 220 kilograms. So that's 450 plus, maybe more. 400, it's times 2.2. So kilograms, 220 kilograms times 2.2. 220 times 2.2. 484. My gosh. So he's going to overhead squat 484 pounds. Let's see. Yeah, so you can sort of see how his body is stiffening and tightening as he goes to lift this weight. So during this phase right here at the bottom, he does take his time at the bottom, by the way. But during this phase at the bottom, this is where he's really taking in that breath. He's tightening his core. He's making everything around his spine tight as he goes to lift that weight. Now notice, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but he's actually focusing on the eccentric portion of that lift. He's actually focusing on that eccentric portion of that lift. So, I'm sorry? The actual extension, that actual triple extension portion of the lift. So, really solid. Really, really solid stuff, but yeah. Okay. So, all of that to say that the Valsalva maneuver is pretty important. And we want to really get people to practice that skill of bracing over time and get better at that over time. All right, let's move on. All right, so now we're going to speak about the pelvis. Now we're going to speak about some very common things we see in the pelvis. So we haven't talked about the concept of muscular imbalance yet, have we?
No.
All right, so let's get into muscular imbalance and what exactly that is. So we mentioned before that muscles have agonist and antagonist muscles, right? And these muscles work together to keep the body in a sort of balance. They keep the body from doing one thing because muscles just pull in one direction by themselves, right? So in order for the muscle to not be pulling in either way, they need to work together. But sometimes what happens is our muscles can become imbalanced in their development. So a really famous and a really common example of this is the hip flexor muscles being compromised. So sometimes when you have muscular imbalance in your hip, you have one set of muscles in those hips that are activated more. And then as a result, because those muscles are activating more, the antagonist muscles don't have to work as hard. So let me give you an example. You have two coworkers, and their job is to get 100% of the work done in that day. If one person does 90%, that other person doesn't have to do 90% of the work. That other person doesn't even have to do 50% of the work. All they need is to do another 10%, and then they'll be at their 100. So that's what happens when we look at muscular imbalance. So think about one set of muscles is overactivated, and as a result, the body is smart. It knows that the opposite set of muscles don't have to work as hard. So that's exactly what we see. It is bad. It is bad. Yeah, it's definitely something that we want to correct. And it's definitely something that we're going to be looking to correct with our clients. These are things that are very, very common. So anyway, we have two instances of pelvic tilts. We have what's called an anterior pelvic tilt, or your hips are pointed towards the front. So it's almost like if your hips were a bucket of water and that bucket of water is like this, instead of being like this and keeping all the water in the bucket, they're tilting forward. So that water's spilling out from the front side. And then with posterior, the water's spilling out from the back side. All right, so to give you another example of how exaggerated these are. So this is going to be good posture. The head, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, they're all in alignment. They're all in a perfect straight line. But when you have that anterior pelvic tilt, that's sort of where you have, first off, the biggest thing that I notice first in these anterior pelvic tilts is that really big arch. So that really big lumbar arch. And then you can see that their stomach kind of pokes out and their butt definitely pokes out. Those hips are pointed towards the front of their body. And then the opposite, posterior pelvic tilts are not as common. You mainly only see these in like older people. That's why they're named, I don't know if you've ever heard of grandma hips. But like, yeah, those are grandma hips because older people tend to develop this condition. And essentially, it's when the water's pouring towards the back, and you could they sort of like are walking very square. They're walking very square, and they're walking kind of awkward. So anyway, what's going on from a muscular standpoint? Well, first off, let's think of the muscles, the two opposing set of muscles that move the hip. So we have two sets of muscles. What are the muscles responsible for hip extension? We know this. Glute. And what's the other muscle group? Hamstrings. Glute and hamstrings. So the glutes and the hamstrings And then the muscles responsible for hip flexion. These are gonna be, does anyone know before I tell you? Say that, say what?
No, sense of promises.
Say what? Yeah, okay, the one that starts with an I. So the iliacus, the rectus femoris, and the psoas major. So let's take a look at all those muscles. No, excuse me. So psoas major here, iliacus, which is here, and then that rectus femoris. No, this one, sorry. Rectus femoris, which is going to be here. So those are your hip flexor muscles. So when we look at an anterior pelvic tilt, do you think it's going, which set of muscles do you think is going to be tight? Is it going to be these muscles in the front or these muscles in the back? Yes, it's going to be the muscles in the front that are going to be too tight. They're going to be overly active. Let's get the top layer on.
Where I see it is because he's anteriorly. His pelvis is tilting anteriorly.
Yes, his pelvis.
Seems like something is like over pulling.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I just want to relay that to everyone. So friends at home, what James is saying is, so these muscles, imagine these muscles are on his body, right? These muscles are pulling down on the hip because they're so tight. They're pulling down on the hip. So those are going to be your what's considered overactive muscle. That muscle is going to be overactive. And then since that set of muscles on the front side of the body are doing most of the work, the opposite set of muscles don't have to do any work. So as a result, they become weak. And those muscles are going to be your glutes and your hamstrings, which are two very bad muscles to have weak. Those are some of our biggest muscles in our body. So what does that tell you? That tells us that if we're looking to develop our glutes and our hamstrings, we really should take care of this anterior pelvic tilt so we can properly get them up to strength and up to speed. What else did I want to say here?
Question.
Yep, question.
So when it comes, so if you sit down,
Mhm.
right, it's anterior. The hip flexion
Hip flexors, yeah.
are tight, so they overactive.
Yeah, so the hip flexors are active.
So to help fix that, should we focus more on the hamstrings and the glutes, or should we focus more on relaxing the hip flexion and muscle in the.
Good question. Good question. Good question. Good question. So that's a little bit ahead. We're gonna let me continue to talk about it because there's actually one more muscle group that we're gonna look at. So we've just spoken about the hip, but if you notice, his spine is sort of out of alignment too. So there are two opposing muscle groups that we're gonna look at there as well. So for this anterior pelvic tilt, we can also say that these abs are going to be weaker. They're not going to be activated. And that's because the muscle on the opposite side, that erector spinae muscle, do you guys remember that one? That erector spinae muscle is very, very tight. So since that muscle on the backside is tight, the muscle on the front side doesn't have to work as hard. So it's going to get really weak as a result. So just to put this in perspective, an anterior pelvic tilt is going to give you a weak set of glutes, a weak set of hamstrings, and a weak set of abs. Abs, your rectus abdominis. So yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And again, this is something that a lot of people deal with. I would say 70% of the new clients that I get, they have some degree of an anterior pelvic tilt. Like, you know, some people are better than others, but in most cases, people have tight hips. Why? Why is this so common? Because we're always sitting down. Think about it. When you're sitting down, your femur is not in that elongated position as when you're standing, right? It's shortened. So as a result, the distance between your hip and the muscle gets shortened. And that's what causes that tightness. That's what causes you to get used to it being tight. Standing too much would not cause that at all. Standing too much would be a good thing for you to do. It's going to help to bring those back to a more normalized length and balance between the two muscles. But let's talk about a few things we would do to remedy. So we would simultaneously work on both of our deficiencies. So we would work on loosening up those tight hip flexors. So we would do that hip flexor stretch. We do a bunch of those different mobility type things and corrective exercises, as well as we would work on strengthening the abs, the glutes, and the hamstrings. So you're simultaneously lengthening the tight muscles and strengthening the elongated or weak muscles. And then for the posterior pelvic tilt, it's going to be the opposite. So for posterior tilt, the muscles that are tight are your glute, your hammies, and your abs. And then as a result, the muscles that are weak are your erector spinae and your hip flexors. And to remedy that, you'd strengthen the weak muscles, lengthen the tight muscles. Yeah.
But like you said, like, not only stretching helps, but also strengthening another area will also help.
Yeah, that is very, very true. So James just said a lot of times people, when they have a tightness in a certain area, they resort usually to just stretching. But it's important to remember that our body works in balance, and we want to also strengthen anything that might be out of balance. So yeah, the body works in conjunction in that way. All right, so let's go to this next slide. So this is everything we just spoke about. Posterior pelvic tilt, not as common. The tight muscles of the glute max, hammies, and rectus abdominis. Weak muscles, erector spinae, and hip flexors. And then for the anterior pelvic tilt, very common. Erector spinae, hip flexors are tight. Glutes, hams, and abs are weak.
That's why I like that guy, Squat University.
Squat University is a really great channel. Yeah.
Area that you have weakness in. And not only he talks about, like you said, lifting, but
Sure.
you certain like strength exercises that help lift.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love Squat University. If you guys ever want to follow a really cool YouTube channel, Squat University, it's pretty cool. All right, so get that written down. By the way, when our hips are neutral, we call that neutral hips, in case you were wondering. Neutral hips. So neutral hips is the goal for anyone that has any of these two conditions. Neutral hips or neutral pelvis. Okay, cool stuff. How do we feel? We just finished another lesson. You said it sucks? Oh, it was fast. Yeah. These, they go by fast. They go by fast. All right. So for the rest of the time today, we're going to actually work on some review. And this is more like reinforcement than review, because I don't expect you to like know this stuff yet. Obviously, we're going to be looking stuff up, but the mere fact of like going over it and going through our notes, it's going to help us to internalize these concepts. So I have a worksheet that I'm going to pass out. In fact, you guys can pass this out. I'm going to get the online crew. I'm going to get you that worksheet now. This is a Word doc, so you can write on it. I just dropped it in the chat. Do we need to work in groups for this? I think we can be okay if we work by ourselves. Try to go through your notes and try to work through these. And let's say maybe 20 minutes. Everyone on this side, you got one? Dame, you got one? Yeah, let's say 20-25 minutes. So like around 9 o'clock, we'll start to go over these. We are going, so I have a lot of reviews, so don't worry. I have a lot more in the chamber for us. And I'm also going to give you some more resources to help with your review this weekend. And we'll go over that after. By the way, who didn't do their homework? Oof. If you did not do your homework, please tell me. Thank you. Doing enough? Gives me enough. Thanks. James, you do your homework? No. James, you got your homework? Are you doing it now? Okay. I got you. Alex. Alex, did we get a homework from you? Yeah. Oh, okay. Alex. Thank you. And James, you're doing yours now? And Alexander, you're doing yours now, right?
Yeah, put the double down, it's like a double for TFL. Right?
Say that again?
By hip abductors.
Oh, yeah, TFL's on there twice. You don't have to.
Wow. Kind of.
Thank you, sir. Say that one more time?
First one.
Yeah, the joints that they cross. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Make sure where the. What's the latest?
The infraspinatus? Damien wanted to see where the infraspinatus is located. So the infraspinatus, muscle in the rotator cuff, it's gonna be right here, right below the supraspinatus. Problem is, this muscle is deep because you can see that the traps are over them. So sometimes, I don't know what you're using, but you got to remove the layer of the traps and then you can see it right here. Oh, you got the same one? Yeah. Finish up another 5-10 minutes. You guys almost done or? Huh?
Well, we gotta go over this.
Say what?
We are going to-
We are gonna go over this eventually. Where are you guys right now though? The first page. All right, well, take as much time as you need. We got all next week to review, so we don't have to do this today. Take as much time as you need. But I do want to go over a few things, so maybe like 9:20, I'll stop you guys. Say what? Scapulohumeral rhythm. We talked about it. That's just when we move our humerus, the scapula has to move. So that's just the name for them working together. So in order to lift our arm into abduction, the scapula has to move in order for that to happen. Well, abduction and then adduction, scapula comes back together when we bring the arms down. Right?
Most of it, I understand, I just want to go over the muscles that cross.
Biarticular muscles. Okay. Good question. How many questions are on this test? Let's see. Yeah, it's not gonna be 80, but I guess
Hey.
it's not 80. I think it's around 50. Let me see. Uh, 42. 42 questions. Yeah. He said 80. Yeah, I was almost there. Yeah. Yes. Hmm? Yes, yeah, Jackie Robinson number. That's right, Mariano, the GOAT. Yeah, so in scanning this test, it just requires that you know this stuff really, really well. Like, I'll give you an example of a question. What is the action of the semimembranosus? The action of the semimembranosus.
So. It's a deflection.
Yeah, knee flexion. So you need to know that the semimembranosus is part of the hamstring, and the hamstrings do knee flexion. So it's just all about knowing this stuff.
Now,
Yep.
now there's some muscles that, that's part of more than one group. Like it's a knee flexor and the extension, depending on the movement, right?
A muscle that's a knee flexor and a knee extensor.
So you said semi-membranosus, right?
Membranosus is a knee flexion. The semimembranosus is knee flexion.
Oh, no, a hip extension.
Yeah, hip extension is
So
not the
that's-
same. Hip extension is a different joint action.
Would they specify the joint action? Any question?
Well, the way that this question is phrased, so the question said, what is the action of the semimembranosus? But it gives you 4 choices. So you got to pick the right choice of the 4. If 2 of the choices said hip extension and knee flexion, then you'd have to talk to me and say, Kyle, this question's phrased incorrectly. But there is always one correct answer.
So with this test, some question that one answer?
This test and no other test. No other test we're gonna take, not even the final, is gonna have questions that have more than one answer. This past test was the only one. What happened? Oh, yeah? It's-
Like my second.
Online crew, how we doing? You guys almost done? Cool. On campus crew, where we at? So I wasn't expecting you to do this like from memory, right? You know, you could have used your notes. Yeah, but at this point, this is a way of helping us to remember. But like, we can't really, it'd be impossible. We just learned this. Let's give it another 5-ish minutes. I mean, yeah, let's just go into it now. It doesn't make any sense to wait.
If say I wanted to do Zoom, how would I?
Oh, excuse me, sorry. It's if you wanted to do Zoom, you couldn't. No, you can't. You can if you, yeah, well, here's the thing. If you are ever not on campus, you're absent. If you want to come into the class and take notes, you'll still be absent, but you can come into the room. It's New York State. New York State. So New York State is really particular about what they deem as the classroom. And if a student is not in the classroom, they're absent. But the online crew, because they are online, this is their online environment is technically their classroom. So
But they could come over here on campus.
actually, no. If they were to come on campus, no, they wouldn't get credit. But there's one instance where we waive that, and that's going to be for job fair, which I'll talk to you guys about in a few weeks.
Feels like I think the on-campus should have access and get credit from the student, because say you can't go that day.
Well, the thing is, like, New York State doesn't really like online learning. So this actually, it's in talks to be like phased out, actually. So, yeah, because New York State they're just very stringent with like how they do things. Yeah, I mean, who knows? All right, let's go over this stuff. So muscles that cross two joints. So we have the biceps brachii cross what and what? Elbow and shoulder. What about the triceps? Shoulder and the elbow. What about the rectus femoris? Hip and knee. What about the biceps femoris? Knee and hip. Sure. What about the psoas major? Hip and spine. What about the sartorius? Knee and spine, sure. Hip and the knee. Oh, excuse me, knee and the spine, sorry. Muscles of the quadricep. What are the muscles of your quads? We got the rectus femoris. The vastus lateralis, which is located where? That's the one that's more on the side, right? That's the one that's furthest away from the midline. Then you have which one? Intermedialis, where's that? Inner, okay, we could say deep underneath the rectus femoris. And then we have the last one, which is the medialis, vastus medialis. And then someone at home, tell me the joint action of the quadriceps.
To extend the knee.
Jeremy, why do I have you guys? Say it one more time, Jeremy.
To extend the knee.
Yes, knee extension. Very nice. Yep. So good question. So Freddie just asked, do we have to know the locations of the muscles? And is that why you just went over it, Kyle? That's what Freddie just asked me. No, you don't have to know the specific locations, but personally, I find when I can picture in my mind where things are, it helps me to remember them a little bit better. And it's also cool to know your muscles, right? You know, you guys are gonna be trainers. So it's cool that you know this is where the vastus medialis is, intermedialis is deep, you know, so it's just good information to know. All right, hamstrings. What are the muscles of the hamstrings? Someone at home, besides Jeremy.
Biceps femoris.
Biceps first,
Semitendinosus,
semitendinosus,
semimembranosus,
semimembranosus. Very nice. What's the joint action of the hamstring?
knee flexion,
E flexion. Beautiful job. All right, scapulohumeral rhythm. This is actually something I forgot to speak about. I think I spoke about it, but I didn't speak about it enough. So let's cover this really quick. So scapulohumeral rhythm. First part of that word is scap, like the scapula. Second part is humeral, like the humerus. So it just says that the scapula works to help the humerus move. So when we bring our arms up into abduction, the scapula has to separate, it has to come away. And when we bring those arms back down, the scapula comes back together. So upward rotation of the scapula, that's going to be shoulder abduction. And then downward rotation of the scapula is going to be shoulder adduction. All right, let's talk about the rotator cuff muscles. The rotator cuff muscles. Anterior deltoid. No, so the muscles of the rotator cuff. There's an acronym for this. SITS. SITS. So the S stands for supraspinatus. Like Supra, you guys know, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a car called the Supra. There also used to be an old skate brand called Supra. Some of you might be too young for that, but yeah, they had like shoes. They had like these weird shoes. Supras. Back way like early 2000s, like 2010s. They were skate shoes called Supras.
Oh, it's about the Heelys. Yeah.
No, not Heelys. Not Heelys. All right. This is mandatory information. So I'm going to look up Supras. Kristen, do you know what Supras are? The skate brand? Supra shoes. Skate shoes. I am 32. I look 28. That's a good thing. All right. These are Supras. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these. Yeah, these are Supras. Yeah. Like these. Yeah, it's a very mall suburban type of look. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like Journeys, definitely. All right. Okay. What were we talking about? So supraspinatus. What's the second one? Yeah, infraspinatus. Infraspinatus. Remember, we said that was the one that was here. Then we had the teres minor. Oh, I'm telling you, teres minor. Right here, the little one. And then last but not least, the subscap, which is deep. Okay.
On a test, you don't have like a map of the body, like, oh.
No, so the test is all going to be like words. There's not going to be no diagrams or anything like that. This is strictly just so we can picture them in our mind. Because again, another reason why learning in a classroom is kind of better for this stuff than learning in a book is because when you learn in a book and you learn the muscle and the joint action, that's cool. But actually putting it to where it is on the body, it just makes it so much more like tangible. And it makes it more like real life. At least in my opinion. What were we saying? Yeah, subscap. All right, so the rotator cuff function. So what's the function of the rotator cuff that I taught you the other day? Who remembers? So what did we say? We said something very specific. We said the job of the rotator cuff muscles is to do one thing.
Stabilize the humeral head and the glenoid fossa.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Ryan, beautiful. Word for word, too. Stabilize the humeral head into the glenoid fossa. In English, that means you're keeping the ball of your humerus in the socket of your scapula.
So usually when people show the place, they tear something, it's around those.
Yeah, those are the muscles that you look at when people are have injuries in the rotator cuff, essentially. Yeah, some people can do it. So Freddie is saying some people can literally pull their arm out the socket and put it back. Yeah, I'm not one of them, fortunately. All right, let's talk about the important tendon. So the Achilles tendon. What inserts into the Achilles tendon? What muscle we spoke about in the ankle inserts to the Achilles tendon?
That's the.
Gastroc.
Yeah.
Gastrocnemius. What about the patella tendon? What about the patella tendon? No, so the patella tendon, where is the patella tendon? Yeah, in the knee. So it's going to be on the front side of the body, right above the knee. So what's the muscle that inserts there? We said it was one of the muscles of the quadricep. Which one was it? Yeah, the intermedius. The intermedius is the vastus intermedius is going to insert into the patella tendon. And then last but not least, I guess I can stop sharing my screen now. Last but not least, the what inserts into the IT band? What did we just say earlier? Hip flexor muscles.
It's bicep femoris.
No, not the biceps femoris. So it's a hip flexor muscle that's not the rectus femoris. You got two other choices. Iliopsoas. Iliopsoas inserts into the IT band. So just to go through all of those again, the gastrocnemius inserts into the Achilles tendon. Sure. Gastrocnemius. So let's take a look at them. He's like in his weird position now. Gastroc inserts into the Achilles tendon. Gastroc and the soleus, excuse me. Vastus intermedialis. Intermedius, excuse me. Inserts into the patella tendon. And the iliopsoas, which is the group containing the psoas major and the iliacus, those two muscles together, that inserts into the IT band, which is a layer of tissue on the side of your leg here. So you can't see it. It's a layer that's over this. Iliacus is the one that I'm right here, that I'm on right now. And the psoas major. So both of these muscles together are the iliopsoas, this and this. Three that. Yeah, we're talking about the IT band. But the Achilles tendon, you're asking? So what muscles connect into the Achilles tendon? So the psoas major, so these two muscles together, the iliacus, which is what I'm pointing to now, and the psoas major, iliopsoas, those two muscles are the iliopsoas. That inserts into the IT band, the iliotibial band. Sorry, IT band is short for iliotibial band.
Just a question, does the TFL insert into it as well?
That is, I'm sorry, the TFL inserts into the IT band as well. Was I not saying that too? Yeah. TFL being your tensor fascia lata.
That's not.
No, that is not the IT bin.
I'm not saying that.
That inserts into the IT bin. Thanks, Ryan. All right, so for the rest, we'll leave this for Monday when we come back. There's just a few things I want to go over with you all. So number one, if you don't have this app, get it. It's really useful. You can, what's it called? It's called iMuscle 2. It's like $3 or $4. Might be $5 because inflation is a thing. There's also another cool website I want to show you. I'm going to show you how to get to this website. So if you go to Google, you type in muscle quiz. Again, you're going to find that website GeoGuessr again, and it's going to bring you to this really cool quiz. So this is essentially the same quiz that we did for the bones, but just for the muscles. So you have the abs, the adductor longus. Essentially, you just mark all of the muscles, and it switches it up every single time. Like gluteus medius, you start from there. Right, cool. All right. What else did I want to mention to you all? Also, if you had never used Quizlet, I'm going to show you what Quizlet looks like. Quizlet. You have to sign up to actually get in, but it's literally a site for flashcards. Now, you could actually find pre-made flashcards with the joint actions and the muscles already on the site if you just search it up. Or you can make your own. So you literally have your choice on how you want to study it. But it's really, really useful. It's a cool tool. And I think there's no paid requirement for this, right? Right, yeah. So with the actual paid portion of the app, it has just more stuff you can do. But like if you just need to study for this test, you can use it for free. You'll be totally fine. Right. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then of course you have your sheets that we printed out today. Definitely want to get some study time in this weekend between those three choices, that quiz, Quizlet itself, and these sheets. All right.
And we have a copy sheet in the drive, right?
Copy of the sheets in the drive. It should be under week 4. Week should be under week 4. Just one more thing. So the job fair is going to be 2 weeks from today. So it's going to be, 2 weeks from Wednesday. So it's going to be August 9th. Right now, we have 8 gyms that are in the tri-state area registered and signed up, ready to come. We also have another hiring event that we're doing strictly with Blink Fitness. So we're going to go to the flagship Blink 2 blocks from here. It's like on 8th Avenue and 26 or something like that. I used to go to that gym all the time. You're going to go, we're going to talk to their corporate team, and we're going to see what's up with Blink. Now, here's the deal with Blink. I'll give you the spiel. The pay is not the best. The pay is going to be, it's better than it was before. So I think it's around $20 an hour. And for you all, since you'll be graduating from this core program, you're going to make more than someone would if they're just starting out. So 20-something dollars. But again, 3 to 6 months, if you work there, you're going to have such a vast amount of people you'll be training. You're going to become a really solid trainer in that time. And you'll use that experience to piggyback and go to a better suited place for your needs. But Blink is a really good start in the industry. It also is pretty sort of corporate and stringent, and that'll just get you used to that side of training, because that dealing with gyms and managers and all the fun stuff that comes along with having a job, it's important to know how to deal with that because a lot of people don't when they first start working. So yeah, it'll get you up to snuff. But anyway, that's all I got for you this week, friends. Enjoy your weekend. Go see Oppenheimer, go see Barbie, go see Ninja
Thank you.
Turtles, go see Spider-Man. I haven't seen a movie all summer and I'm like,
You should watch this 1 30-minute thing on Netflix for the Black Lives Matter thing. It's a movie where this guy keeps on getting killed by the same cop.
oh wow, that
Yeah.
sounds intense. I'll check it out though.
It's this is strange.
Two Distant Strangers. I'll check it out. All right, peeps, take care. Bye.
You.